Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. What are we drinking? You said you're drinking a beer today.
Yeah, I'm drinking a Swedish beer from a can. So that's how glamorous I am.
Is that your go-to kind of Friday afternoon drink?
No, normally it's wine. But I do like a beer now and then, but I don't have any wine at home, and it's still a bit early. It's only noon.
Yeah.
So this beer isn't that strong. So you can have it with a glass of beer with lunch.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Nice. Yeah, it's all right. Well, cheers. We'll do a virtual kind of cheers. Thank you for breaking the ice with us. There we go.
Är det skönt? Victoria? Är det skönt?
Ingen som vill ha som mig.
Jag fattar visst det. Ja! Men jag ska ju bara lämna det här själv då.
Ja!
Yeah, I'm very excited. So storytelling is an art, and I'm super curious to just find out how you would define your own personal style in terms of storytelling through film.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and I'm still learning. You learn every day, almost. And for me, it's about telling the stories about people and what's going on inside of them. When I start, writing, it's usually comes from an image or something I've read or a piece of music. But I listen to a lot of classical and neo-classical music, and they have a certain storytelling pace that drives you forward. And if you combine that with a sentence or a picture or image of a person, that something starts in your head, and you want to know more about what's going on with that person. When I think about scenes and think about characters, I always try to place them in a situation where there's conflict. And I remember when I started out writing, 15 years ago, I thought to myself, well, you don't need conflict. You can make a good film without conflict, but I was wrong. You can't.
Conflict is what pushes the characters forward, right?
Yeah,
always trying to overcome something.
Yeah, otherwise it's just a boring story with beautiful images, and that's something else. That's not a story.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that you take inspiration from so many different places, especially from music. I've never heard that before. That's really, really interesting. I actually was going to ask you if you needed to believe in a particular subject as a writer to make the story compelling, or if you could just hear a subject, hear about something and then write it in a way that makes the subject compelling. So I was gonna ask you that, because that's an interesting one. Do you really need to be super invested in it as a writer to make it become something great?
I don't think so. I think you get compelled while you're writing it. In this case, I'm writing about this community of disabled people, which I didn't know much about beforehand. I worked as a personal assistant or a caregiver when I was in my 20s. So I don't really know, and I don't have, many disabled friends, close friends. but it's not about. I don't think it's about writing a story about a disabled person. I think it's about writing a story about persons, people. And that's, you know, in this film, it's about two people, and they are, you know, they are exactly the same on the inside, and that's what I wanted to convey. The standard rule is write what you know, and I don't know much about the disabled community, but I do know quite a bit about people and their psychology.
I'm interested in terms of structure as a writer. Are you big on the structure? Because I've just read Sid Field's book on how to write a screenplay, and whoa, it's like suddenly you're trying out a bit of writing here and there, and you read this book, and now it rewires your thinking of how you now need to write a screenplay, and it can be quite overwhelming. But then you look at it in terms of structure, and you're like, it makes so much sense in terms of story.
Yeah. I've read those books too.
Yeah.
And there are so many different schools on how to write structure. I don't think that's my strongest point, but I do work mostly at building a 3-act structure thing. So beginning, middle, and the end, basically, and I plant stuff. So and that seems to work. It's an, you know, the old hero's journey. I tend to go back to that. It doesn't matter what genre I'm writing. That always seems to work.
Do you do a huge character backstory before you put sort of pen to paper?
Not necessarily a huge backstory, but I need to know the person. I need to know about the person's interests and wants and needs. But I'm writing a story now where I firstly I write down the images I have about what this person is going through and what he or she wants, that I think, and from that I can write a treatment, and when I have all the scenes all together, I can place them in the right order that fits the 3-act structure, basically. Or what feels good in what feels good for you. And sometimes when you've done that, let's say you have 50 or 60 scenes or whatever, and you can almost immediately see that, between these scenes you need something else to understand. To understand the what's coming next and what's logical. Sometimes you can be too logical when you're writing a scene that's 2-3 minutes long, and it's a scene about, you know, two people talking about something, and if you were to see that in real time, it's probably a conflict or discussion that would take an hour and a half or 2 hours, but you need to compress that to 2 minutes and make it believable, and with believable dialogue, and go in at the right time and go out at the right time. So that's the molding. That's the most difficult part. And I have always, I've read somewhere in some storybook that you go in as late as you can and leave as soon as you can.
Cool.
And I go by that. I think that's a good way of building structure and building intensity and interest.
Let's just talk a little bit about Alive in terms of budget, because I read that you made it with very little money.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to what is the key to making a high quality film with very little money? How do you do it?
Good writing.
Okay.
No, I knew when I wrote this that all my films have been low budget, basically. And when I wrote this story, I knew that I didn't need many characters or many places. I knew that it wasn't going to be very expensive. And you know, if I had you know a lot of money, I don't think necessarily it would have been, you know, much better. I'm very pleased with it. We shot it for like, I don't know, 15K or something.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing thing when you see people making films of this, you know, kind of quality and this sort of story that is so compelling and so beautiful that you don't need a huge amount. You can create with very little.
Yes.
It just comes down, like you were saying, to writing, to the acting, to the performances,
Yes.
and to the overall, I suppose, the edit, you know, the overall color grading and everything that goes into it. Yeah, it's fascinating that you don't need.
And yeah, as you said, obviously acting is you know, is extremely important. Yeah, I'm very fond of acting. I tried to be an actor myself when I was a teenager, but I failed miserably early on. And I'm glad I stayed behind the camera. But in when I met Madeline Martin and Ava Johansson, who plays the Ida Victoria, I knew that this is going to be a great film because they interpreted the text, you know, amazingly well. So you know, my job was done. I just needed to sit through the shoot. You know, didn't and you know, casting is more than half of your work as a director, I think. And acting is so important to me because when I watch a lot of series at home or films, I can't bear it when I hear something that's out of tune. I'm out. I can't go in there. And people say, oh, well, it's the story's not. No, I don't care because I don't believe in that person anymore, and I can't go back in.
Yes, especially as a filmmaker, I think, you know, one is more in tune to those kind of things. I know for me, I can't really watch TV or film and not look at everything else that's going on. You know, I mean, I'm an actor, so I look at the performances. I'm constantly watching what the actors are doing in terms of their performance and how they have brought the character to life and how this is shot. And so as a filmmaker, you're a lot more in tune to that. So yes, when someone is not believable or there's something a little bit off, it does throw you off completely.
Even if it's, you know, slightly wrong in your mind decision, it's weird.
It is, but it definitely does happen. What is your casting process like? What do you look for in your actors that you like to work with?
Well, I think that I have an ear for, you know, the tuning of things, and I like to think that anyway. And when I casted this film, I you know, casted Madeline from the start because I hadn't worked with her before, but we knew each other and we had tried stuff, and so she didn't really need to audition because I knew her qualities. But when I found Victoria, I'd seen her in a short film when where she played a man, a very well-known man, a well-known actor in Sweden. So I brought her in for an audition, and we just fiddled around with the text and tried different stuff. And I just went with my gut feeling, and I saw in her that she's going to be really engaged in this. She's going to give her all for this role because it's an interesting role. And so, but normally when I cast other things, I just need to see if that person is in the zone, or if that person is really, you know, is liking the text or liking what he or she says. Because sometimes they just, you know, talk, and if they just talk, they don't, you know, they are not engaged in what they're saying. and if they're not engaged in what they're saying, they can't be right for the part.
Yeah.
So that balance, and also if you haven't tried the text before, having someone read it, it's also the first time you hear it out loud. And if that, if that is coherent with what's going on in you, or how you have heard it in your head, that's a match, and so that I when I write, I usually hear what I'm writing, but I necessarily don't hear different voices. I hear my own voice saying it, and if it sounds logical to me, then it's good.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yes, it's really important. Anyway, and it might not be the best text in the world, but if it's a believable text, then you can work from that.
And then as a director, how do you pull these subtle but powerful performances out of your actors?
In the live, we talked a lot about what the text means, or what the story means, and what we want to convey and portray. So a lot of the directing was done in rehearsals, and it's just about, it's almost a therapeutic conversation, actually. It's not, I'm not going in and micromanaging stuff, because I don't believe that. If you need to micromanage, because there are long takes, if you need to micromanage, then you're disrupting any force that the actor has prepared or anything. I think it's you have to trust that person, that he or she interprets the text well enough. And so I just, sometimes when we do a lot of takes, we just need to find the balance again, and it could be instructions that are George Lucas simple, like stronger or softer, or in Victoria, who the disabled woman, we just needed to sometimes, because she's got this brain damage and speech impediment, so we just needed to not, sometimes she was too clear in her speech, and we just needed to adjust that a little bit, because she has talked about it was a struggle for her to have this much inside of you, and you're not allowed to express that, to get out. And so I mostly, I sat behind the monitor with my eyes closed, and I was just listening, because I knew the picture, and when I hear, I was listening for a song, basically.
Do you have any advice for up-and-coming writers or directors? I know they're two very different mediums, but any advice for people that are trying to maybe get started in the industry?
I've said this before, but I think it's a good advice to you have to be able to listen. If you are able to listen and take in advice, or take in what's going on around you, and remember that you're starting out, and you have to be humble by the fact that you're starting out. So collect ideas that you have, and see if they, and try them on different people, and try and exercise in the art of pitching. I'm still trying to learn how to pitch. I think it's so difficult. That's why I'm all of my films I've written myself, so I don't need to pitch it to anyone. And so, but listen to people that's been around. Even if you don't share the same taste, you're after the bits of experience from people on how to do things.
What do you want audiences to take away from Alive?
I want them to, because for me, making films is therapeutic. I want to learn more, and I want to get rid of prejudice I might have. So there's film, I want them to think more about, in this case, the disabled community, and I want them to think, you know, to have a more open mind about, you know, how we as a human race that we are all the same inside, even if we look different and act different and, you know, talk different. It's a topic that's rarely been done, I think, before, and I think it's a great topic for discussion about, you know, loneliness and prejudice and love. So it's a mix of all that.
If you could break the ice, meaning have a drink with anyone past or present, who would it be and why?
I've thought of this question, and I think I would have chosen Olivia Colman.
Ah.
Because she's just a wonderful, wonderful actress. She's, you know, up there. She's, I don't know, she's one of my favorites. I think I wanted to break the ice with her because she seems so nice.
Yeah.
She seems so friendly, and it's when you watch interviews with her, she's so, I don't know, it feels like you've known her, or you know
like
her.
She's your friend, yeah.
My friend, yeah. and she's just amazing. And you know, and The Crown and The Favourite.
And Fleabag. Did you see Fleabag?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, her character in Fleabag, you were just like, oh, this woman is just, she's, you know, oh, she's cruel, but she's so good.
I know.
Oh, yeah, she's brilliant. She's brilliant.
And she's got this thing where she can, you know, switch on something, you know, because she doesn't have to, you know, change her appearance, but we can see it in her, you know, demeanor or her way of, you know, carrying herself, that she's another person, and that's you rarely see that in an actress or actor. So I would love to have a drink with her. I would love to work with her, obviously.
Oh, I mean, it's, you know, I don't see why it's not possible.
Well, you never know. Yeah.
You gotta have those kind of people on your goal sheet, you know, for who you want to work with.
Obviously, yeah.
Definitely. Amazing. I mean, this was so great. I have thoroughly enjoyed just chatting to you and hearing your process, and yeah, what a fantastic way to start the weekend. So thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
You have a great one.
You too.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more inspirational videos just like this, then don't forget to subscribe, which you can do by clicking right over here. Also, leave us a comment in the section below and tell us who you guys would like us to break the ice with next.